There's two distinct issues here: medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. I think medical marijuana, I've said before that the president understands the pain and suffering that many people go through who are facing especially terminal diseases, and the comfort that some of these drugs, including medical marijuana, can bring to them. And that's one that Congress, through a rider in 2011, looking for a little help, I think put in an appropriations bill saying the Department of Justice wouldn't be funded to go after those folks. There's a big difference between that and recreational marijuana. And I think that when you see something like the opioid addiction crisis blossoming in so many states around this country, the last thing that we should be doing is encouraging people. There is still a federal law that we need to abide by in terms of the medical, when it comes to recreational marijuana and other drugs of that nature. So I think there's a big difference between medical marijuana, which states have the states where it's allowed in accordance with the appropriations rider have set forth a process to administer and regulate that usage versus recreational marijuana. That's a very, very different subject.
I will share my passion for healthy food. I will make it affordable in my neighborhood. I will add a second location.
Imagine what you can do with the right business credit. Explore your options at wellsfargoworks.com/credit.
Marijuana legalization by the numbers. These are the states where recreational marijuana use is legal. These are the states where only medicinal marijuana use is legal. Recreational and medicinal marijuana continues to be illegal under federal law. In 2015, Americans spent $5.4 billion on legal medical and recreational marijuana. Colorado is projected to make $140 million in tax revenue on marijuana sales in 2016. Washington State is projected to make $270 million in tax revenue on marijuana sales in 2016. Oregon collected $3.48 million in the first month that recreational marijuana became legal. Oregon State is projected to make $10.75 million in 2016 on recreational marijuana use. In Colorado, Washington, and Oregon, tax revenue from recreational marijuana sales has been used to build schools and to fund drug abuse prevention campaigns as well as law enforcement. The Tax Foundation projected that the federal government and states where recreational marijuana is not legal are losing out on $28 billion per year. Marijuana prohibition costs the U.S. $465 million per year to arrest people for marijuana possession, and $3.6 billion per year to enforce marijuana laws. Since marijuana legalization in Colorado, there has not been an increase in teens smoking pot. Since legalization in Colorado, fatal and injury crashes attributed to DUI are down from before legalization. Marijuana arrest rates tumbled in Washington and Colorado from 2008 to 2014, dropping by 90% in Washington and 60% in Colorado. But the racial disparity in marijuana-related arrests hasn't changed.
Spicer, feds could step up enforcement against marijuana use in states at the White House briefing, February 23. Press Secretary Sean Spicer responded to questions about the Trump administration's stance on enforcement of federal marijuana restrictions. Reuters, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said Thursday that he expects states to be subject to greater enforcement of federal laws against marijuana use, a move that could undercut the growing number of jurisdictions moving to legalize the drug for recreational purposes. Spicer, speaking at a White House press briefing, said that President Trump sees a big difference between use of marijuana for medical purposes and for recreational purposes. The president understands the pain and suffering that many people go through who are facing, especially terminal diseases, and the comfort that some of these drugs, including medical marijuana, can bring to them, Spicer told reporters. Spicer said that states' allowance of marijuana for recreational purposes is something the Department of Justice, I think, will be further looking into. Bannon, Trump administration is in unending battle for deconstruction of the administrative state. The Department of Justice declined to comment on Spicer's remarks on Thursday afternoon following the briefing. As of the beginning of the year, 7 states and the district had adopted laws legalizing marijuana for recreational use. In 2013, as states took up the issue of legalizing marijuana, then Deputy Attorney General James Cole issued a memo reiterating that the Justice Department would continue to enforce federal drug laws. But Cole said that in places that legalize marijuana, federal officials should look to the regulatory systems of states to determine whether they should intervene. In states with robust systems, Cole wrote, federal officials should continue to leave the matter to local law enforcement. But states without such systems might face challenges from the federal government, he said. Cole said the federal government's priorities would include preventing distribution of marijuana to children and preventing cartels from getting their hands on revenue from marijuana sales. Advocates of liberal marijuana laws have eyed the arrival of Attorney General Jeff Sessions with unease. The former Republican senator from Alabama has a long track record of speaking out against marijuana use. In his confirmation hearings, Sessions acknowledged that disrupting states' marijuana markets by enforcing federal marijuana laws could create a strain on federal resources. But he said he won't commit to never enforcing the law. Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson, whose state was among the first to authorize recreational use of marijuana, said in a statement Thursday that he was deeply disappointed to hear Spicer's comments and noted his earlier call for a meeting with Sessions to discuss the matter. My office will use every tool at our disposal to ensure that the federal government does not undermine Washington's successful, unified system for regulating recreational and medical marijuana, he said. In explaining the rationale of greater enforcement of federal marijuana laws, Spicer cited growing problems with other illicit drug use. I think that when you see something like the opioid addiction crisis blossoming in so many states around this country, the last thing we should be doing is encouraging people, Spicer said. There is still a federal law that we need to abide by. In a statement Thursday afternoon, the National Cannabis Industry Association took issue with that argument. Science has discredited the idea that marijuana serves as any kind of gateway drug, and the addiction and death rates associated with opioids simply do not occur in any way with cannabis, said Aaron Smith, the organization's executive director. Politics newsletter The Big Stories and Commentary Shaping the Day. Sign up. He also argued that the current state programs are well regulated and operating well. In a separate statement Thursday, the Marijuana Policy Project pointed to polling showing a strong majority of voters opposed to the government enforcing federal prohibition laws in states where marijuana is legal for medical or adult use. The vast majority of Americans agree that the federal government has no business interfering in state marijuana laws, said Mason Tvert, the group's communications director. This administration is claiming that it values states' rights. So we hope they will respect the rights of states to determine their own marijuana policies. An array of marijuana industry executives also spoke out against Spicer's comments, including Danny Davis, managing partner of Convectium. We are hopeful that Mr. Spicer's comments are not representative of the entire administration, Davis said. Many of the states who helped elect President Trump just voted to also support recreational marijuana. It is hard to imagine that he would push an agenda with the support ratings where they are. Voters in California, Maine, Massachusetts and Nevada just approved recreational marijuana use. Here's what they can learn from Washington, Colorado and Oregon, states where marijuana use has already been legalized. Darren Taylor, Danielle Kunitz / The Washington Post.